Okay, so what are you saying, people, and welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. So today, guys, like always, another weekly analysis for you. On the screen, other pairs that we'll be analyzing today, but make sure you do stay to the end of the video, as I do have a bonus pair in store. I didn't take any positions this week, so really nothing to speak on. I was looking for a lot of dollar strength this week, didn't really pan out, so a lot of weakness. So I'll go over the DXY and what I'm looking at now, but it was a bit of a stalemate this week in the markets for me, but next week is looking pretty fruitful, looking to switch my bias around. So first things first, let's take a look at the DXY. So as I just said, I was looking for a lot of strength this week. I was looking for price to continue back to the highs up here. Didn't quite see that happen this week. We were pretty consistent with the higher highs and higher lows. Now I was simply just looking for that to continue. And I was looking for another pullback on Euro USD, Pound USD. Do find some entries to long. There were some, but there was kind of 50-50, didn't really sit right, so I stayed out in the market, and rightly so, because we did actually have a big dive to the downside this week, breaking through structure, which for me has turned the 4 hour from bullish structure to bearish, and also judging how the weekly candle's closing as well, really strong emphasis to the downside. It does look likely that we'll probably see more downside next week, at least coming back into this weekly support. This is where a lot of wicks did cluster at around 104,500. It looks like price is most likely going to come back and test that same region. How far we go from there, whether we break through it, not too sure about. We could still turn bullish and hit that higher time frame target, but at least for next week, there's a lot of bearish momentum, and I am expecting that to spill over back into this support level. So if I was to drop back down onto the 4 hour, now that we have freshly broken structure, I'm looking for price to come up and retest it. Hopefully we can see price take a bit of a breather in this bearish journey, find that next lower high, and then take it to the downside, and of course looking to take other dollar crosses to the upside, of course. But with the DXY, I'm looking at pullback and some more downside next week to keep up with these lower lows and lower highs, something like this, back down to 104,500. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for DXY going to next week. Not necessarily long-term bearish, but at least for next week, it does look likely we'll see more downside. And same for Euro USD as well. We've gone from bearish structure to now consolidation, and then price breaks out and is now bullish. So I'm looking at a pullback of that move for a high low somewhere, maybe retesting the high, price finding its feet, and again another big push to the upside. Maybe long term we do push back to resistance all the way up here at 1.08935, basically back at that high. So yeah, Euro USD going forward for next week, really strong impulse to the upside. I said I was looking for shorts this week for Euro, didn't really set up. Didn't like the fact that we triple bottomed down here, then broke structure, and then started forming some higher highs and higher lows. That's not really a promising sight for shorts. And now prices, of course, showing some bullish momentum there. So going for next week, looking at the pullback, of course, the inverse of the move we just spoke about on the DXY, looking for a higher low somewhere, maybe a retest of this high here at 1.07734. That looks like a really nice place for a buy. So anticipating a pullback into that area, higher low, and continuations either back to the high if we pull back from there. I think that's a smart target. Or if we want to push the trade a little bit further, we've got some major resistance up there, which also makes sense as well, depending on the risk reward and how you want to manage your positions. But yeah, Euro USD forming some nice bullish structure after breaking out that consolidation. I'm looking for that to continue on another pullback. So that is the analysis going forward into next week. So for USD JPY, the market looks like we have a correction on our hands. Again, the market's still very, very bullish. Looking at the higher time frames, the daily, the weekly, the monthly, we're still seeing a lot of conviction to the upside, but it might be time for a correction, and time the market takes a bit of a breather. So I'm looking at a couple areas for USD JPY. This area of resistance back over here, which price broke through pretty aggressively, never came back for the retest. So I do like this level here at 159.800, just below 160. I feel like that's a really nice level. If we were to keep up this corrective behavior, I do think there's a good chance we will see a bounce. Whether we get all the way back to the high or not, that's another question, but at least a nice smart place for a bounce and potentially ride some momentum to the upside. Price may still want to have a bigger correction. If that is the case, I'm looking at some areas deeper down. A retest of this high still looks really good to me, around 157,700. If we were to have a really big correction, potentially Bank of Japan might intervene. We might spill over really heavily to the downside, see some huge bearish candles taking us lower. This level could come into contention sooner than we all think. So I would keep a close eye on 157,700, but for now, this would be the area I'll be looking to anticipate some buying pressure coming back into the market and possibly a continuation back to the highs. So still the same idea as we've had for the past few months now with the yen pairs. There's still a lot of bullish momentum present. So the idea is still looking to try and catch those higher lows and take price higher. This to me looks like a very corrective move. A lot of wicks up and down. So it tells me that this is most likely just a correction and the market will find its feet at some point and push back to the upside. So yeah, I'll be focusing on the buys here for JPY. And as I said, I really like this level here just underneath 160. Of course, we'll see how price gets there. We'll see how it reacts. Not just going to jump straight in, but for the time being, this looks like a really good level. Try and take the trade back to 161,900 for next week. Okay, so over to USD CAD. So USD CAD looking slightly bearish this week, but overall still kind of stuck in that same consolidation. But we've had one big characteristic that has changed this week with USD CAD is the fact that we are breaking out of this trend line. The market has been very consistent with all of these high lows, as we can see, consistent tests of these trend line. Now price has actually broken through that. It's not the biggest breakout in the world, but it's definitely a break of the trend line here. Price has respected it so well, and now that we're seeing two bearish candles underneath it, not a good sign for the trend line. We are still just about hanging on to this support level here, so this is really the area I want to see break for USD CAD. But if we are going to see some dollar weakness next week, then there is a good chance we will break through this level, and that for me opens up the door for some really nice shorts on USD CAD. And there's a lot of room to the downside. There's a lot of areas of support we could come back into over here, potentially over there, the start of the trend line down here, and potentially even this low. So there is a long way we can go. If I expand to the weekly chart, you can see we've had these lovely bullish and bearish swings, and maybe it's time for potentially another bearish swing back to the low. So there's a lot of downside potential for USD CAD should we break lower and stay consistent with our lower lows and lower highs. But what I'm looking at for next week is definitely a break out of this support level, a retest the lower high somewhere, and a continuation to the downside. So this is the plan here for USD CAD, a retest of around 1.36. Then looking at shorts, next kind of big target, I think for next week, we'll just keep it simple. Back to this area of support where we've got this massive wick on the daily chart. That for me will be the next significant area of support. Again, we can go a lot further, but we'll speak about that at a later date. No need to try and stretch the trade too far for next week, but shorts do look good to me. Just need to see a break of support. As long as you kind of stay inside that level, I'm not really interested in price. But if we do get a nice breakout, I'm looking for price to start tanking, because we've been trapped in this consolidation for a long while. So I do think the breakout will be substantial. So hopefully we can see a nice break and retest around 1.36, looking for some entries in that area, and next target around 1.35200. Okay, so over to Euro Pound. So Euro Pound looks like it has respected 0.85, which was a big level in the market. We were talking about this area on a few occasions over the past few weeks. Big level of support, as we can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, briefly 5 there as well. So it's a big support on the daily chart, and we've come back to retest it. We've also filled that gap as well. So I do think there's a good chance we're just going to see continuation back to this low here around the 0.84 mark. Again, if I expand to the higher time frames, you can see there is a slight bearish trend here. Not the cleanest one in the world, but the market has been pretty consistent with all of these lower highs as I point them out. So there has been a bearish trend to some extent here. I mean, you could argue that this, did not mean to do that. All of this was just consolidation, and yeah, it pretty much is, but it looks like we're getting a continuation now finally outside of that consolidation. Nice little retest of that same level. So there is a good chance we do continue back to that low. So the higher time frames do agree with that bearish bias, and this to me does look like the next lower high. What I would say would be a nice opportunity is if price was to come back and retest 0.85, potentially double top it. Euro Pound is a very choppy pair. It does like its fluctuation, so it wouldn't surprise me if price goes and has another test of 0.85, which then would be a really smart place for an entry. You're trading at a massive level, and risk reward looks very, very favorable as well. If price was to develop and maybe create some support around here and then go and break through that, there could be some shorts on the lower time frames, more intraday if we don't get that bigger swing to the upside. I feel like this will be the best opportunity if it does come around, but of course it might not, and the next best opportunity would probably be a break me test somewhere on a low somewhere. But for me, because euro pound is quite a choppy pair, I want to make sure I'm shorting at the big levels or buying at the big levels and not really trying to put my entry, my stop loss in an area where there's a lot of noise. So I'd wait for a retest of 0.85, stop loss above the high, and the risk reward looks pretty good. You've got some areas you can take partials at, trade a stop loss. That'll be up to you, but I do think there's a good chance we do come back to that swing low and maybe even further as well. So that's the outlook for next week for euro pound. Okay, so now we're on to Aussie dollar. So Aussie dollar has been pretty bullish this week. It does look like price is breaking to the upside. You can see on the daily chart, 3 consecutive bullish candles there. So we are seeing some momentum, and it does look like we are finally leaving this consolidation behind, which we've been in for the past, it seems like a couple months at least. So hopefully we can sustain that momentum. The next big level I'm looking at on the daily chart would be this level of resistance above us, trading around 0.686. Potentially you could see price make its way all the way back to that level. If that's the case, I do want to see price stay above this level of resistance, and hopefully we can use that to our support and potentially continue this uptrend back to that same level of resistance. So what I'm looking at for next week is a retest of this area, rejections, the next high low, and that as well look to position myself long to then anticipate that momentum continuing. It does look like we could see some more weakness on the dollar as well, so that kind of fits that bias as well. And altogether, this looks like a really nice breakout. Again, nothing's 100%. It could be a big fake out as well. Price comes straight back into that range and make things awkward again. If that's the case, I would ignore Aussie dollar from then on until we have another potential breakout. I really don't want to be trading price inside of this range. But for now, it looks like price has committed to the upside. Kind of had a bit of a mini retest there of the wicks after NFP. So it does look like price is holding this area of support. So hopefully we can come back, retest it. Nice solid level support during the week, find some entries and hopefully ride that to the upside, and looking at a long-term target around 0.685, 686 for next week for Aussie dollar. Okay, so over to NZD CAD. So for this one, I'm looking at some downside. I was talking about some pullbacks this week. Looks like that only just came into fruition right at the end of the week. I'm looking for the retest of this low. We're not quite at that level yet, but hopefully a bit more upside. We'll see that early next week, and we can see what we can do at this level of broken support, which will now hopefully act as resistance and potentially give us that lower high to send us back down again. You can see we do have this ascending channel. Market was creating higher highs and higher lows. We finally broke through that. So now I'm looking at the first lower high since we created this high over here, created that low, looking at the first lower high for a retest of that structure and some downside. Long term and bullish on NZD CAD, but we haven't really got to any significant area for me to buy from. I'm waiting for us to see if we can get back down at this area. Nice consolidation, big break to the upside, a lot of momentum. Of course, was resistance over there as well. We haven't gone back to retest this area yet, so for me that is a really nice place for a buy and a realistic place where we could potentially put in the next higher low. We had a big support level down here, creating that first low, big push to the upside. Potentially now the next higher low is printed in after that one. Now I'm looking at a third one potentially, and this could be a nice area for that. So I do think we can see a bit more downside into 0.825 before we do see a bigger move higher. But of course we'll see what price does here, because if we start breaking through, maybe that bigger move is already happening. But if we do see some nice rejection, looking to ride that to the downside, at least back into this area here. Of course you can look to stretch trade a little bit further, but that's more of a bonus. In terms of a good trade, I think just looking for the next low high and a push back to the low makes a whole lot of sense. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for NZD CAD at retest of 0.838 for next week, and looking to take it back down to that swing low just above 0.83. Okay, so next up we've got pound NZD. So still bullish in this one. It looks like we had some breakout this week to the upside, although I'm not quite convinced with the wicks we do have now. Again, in the daily chart, I'm still looking at these higher highs and higher lows. So we had the original low back down there, high, higher low, higher high, And again, I'm looking at this being the next high low in that bullish sequence for another move back to the high. So that's kind of where my bias comes from in the higher time frames. On the 4 hour, we had this kind of descending channel here, which price finally broke out of. Not the most convincing break in the world because you don't really see much momentum. It's always best when we see price really break through. This kind of be a bit of a corrected breakout, so I'm waiting for a bit more emphasis before I do get long. So I was looking for the retest of this area, but because the breakout was quite shallow, not a lot of momentum, I'm kind of waiting for price to push on a little bit further, then look for a retest of that area or maybe a retest of the high. It really depends how far we continue, how impulsive we continue, whether I look for the retest of this high or this low. But the idea is to look for the next high low essentially and look to take it back to the high there. That remains the plan with pound NZD. Like I said, it's quite corrective now, so I need to see some momentum come back into play for me to position myself long. But that is still the main plan with pound NZD. Looking at a retest of this structure here, around 2.08 or 2.09300. And then yeah, targets back at that high. Of course, don't necessarily have to push it that far. I'll be trading a stop loss. I'll just be seeing how far I can take the trade. There's an area here, brief supply, where we stalled a little bit, big move to the downside. That could be an area which you consider as a possible area for partials or to exit the trade altogether. That will be up to you, but my long-term swing target is still back at that high. So that's kind of how I'm looking to tackle price. So hopefully we get some more momentum next week, and I'll be looking at some retests of the high here at 2.093 or 2.08, depending how big the pullback is and how big the impulse is. So that's the plan next week for pound NZD. Okay, so over to CAD Yen. So CAD Yen, again, I'm looking at this as another retracement for the market to go high. I'm still very, very bullish on CAD Yen. If we expand to the daily chart, there's a lot of momentum about. We still do have this high down here, which we could come back and retest. Similar to dollar yen, there is that level down below. Say if the Bank of Japan intervene and we see a big drop for the yen pairs, this could be where price comes back to retest before continuing bullish. So I will definitely keep an eye out for 115,500. We could definitely see a move into that area. But more realistically, especially for next week, a retest of this high looks good. We have been in this kind of tightly knit bullish structure. We saw a nice impulse this week, and we're coming back into this area for a retest. And since we did break through, we never had that retest. Really nice breakout, never came back for the retest. So this is our retest, and I do expect us to see at least a bounce here. Again, targets back at the high, whether we create new highs or not too sure. We still might have that bigger pullback, but in terms of a solid level for a buy to continue with the theme of the market, which has been consistent higher highs and higher lows with a lot of bullish momentum, this makes for a really nice level of support. In terms of rejection, I want to see a bit more emphasis that we are holding this area. Did see a big wick, I think that was from NFP on Friday, so I want to see some more wicks, bullish engulfing candles, evidence that the market is respecting this area on the hourly chart before looking for a buy. Stop loss underneath that area. Again, looking to take a trade back to the high there, and just stay in tune with the market because that's all we've been doing, as we can see, respecting these higher lows, and that's kind of how I see price continuing. If you do go and break through that area, then it might be a possibility that we're going for a bigger retracement, and I wouldn't be too surprised at that with the yen pairs because they've been so bullish. So maybe it is time and it is overdue for that bigger retracement. But for now, still looking at those areas of structure in the 4 hour and the hour. We'll see if they can hold next week. If they don't, then we're looking at some bigger retracement, which we'll probably talk about for next week. But for now, that's the plan for CAD Yen, 117,800. Looking for buys back to the high at 118,500. Okay, so over to pound USD. So we were pretty bullish this week. This is a pair I was looking to short, but never really set up how I wanted it to. Dollar was very weak, and of course that helped pound to push to the upside. Now we're trading at major resistance. So things are looking interesting for pound because we're back at this area of resistance again, and this is pretty much where we've been ranging from all year, minus a few fake outs, one over there, and a second one, or a pretty big second one down there. We've just been fluctuating between these two levels. So effectively, I want to see a breakout because then that will give us some direction, hopefully finally a trend on pound USD, or at least a sustained trend. We've had some miniature trends from time to time, but nothing really major. So hopefully a big break of this could be the catalyst for a big trend and maybe a push back to a high up here. And that's kind of what I'm waiting for pound USD, because I was looking for a move back to the low of the range, but that didn't happen. Price kind of came to halfway or slightly below halfway before pushing back up. Now we're back at resistance, so this could be a nice place to short, because of course price has struggled many times to break through this. So sells here definitely do make sense. Not really my type of trade. I'm waiting for momentum, waiting for pullbacks. So really what I want to see is price breaking through this. Hopefully some more dollar weakness can help pound USD with that. And then I'll be looking for opportunities above it. So dropping to the 4 hour, if you do see some rejection here, sells do make a lot of sense, and we could see another pushback down, maybe to come and retest some structure down here, which we didn't retest when we broke through. So we could see a move like that. But like I said, I'm not really interested in that. I'm looking for more opportunity that favor momentum and favor a trend, which we're not really seeing right now. But if we do get a strong break of the high here, again, looking to anticipate that as the breakout. So then I'll be looking at some pullbacks and retests to continue price further. So this is really what I'm interested in for pound, a big breakout finally, and taking some buys to the upside, similar to Aussie dollar, which we just covered. We've seen a nice breakout of that consolidation, looking for the retest and some continuation. That's exactly what I'm looking at for pound USD, just waiting on the breakout. But at the same time, we might not get the breakout, we might hold resistance, and we might come back down. So keep an eye out for that if that's what you're interested in. But for me, I'll be waiting for this. And if it doesn't happen, then I'll be sitting on my hands with pound. But hopefully you can get a nice breakout of 1.28195. Long-term targets back at the high, all the way at 1.31. Maybe in the meantime, you can look at this swing point here around just underneath 1.3. So that could be a nice target potentially for next week, depending on the momentum we see. But yeah, definitely wait for a breakout and a retest for pound USD to get some nice buys in next week. Okay, so over to pound CAD. So pound CAD, I was looking at buys this week, just didn't quite see enough juice to get to my level of interest. I've been talking about this area here, really nice resistance before we had this massive breakout. I was hoping price could get there for a retest. Didn't quite see that happen at around 1.722. And now price is looking pretty bullish. So it looks like we could be seeing another bullish swing. Again, if I do expand to the daily chart, we do have a bullish trend on our hands. Not the cleanest one, but we are seeing successive higher highs and higher lows. So I'm still looking at that continuing until it doesn't, basically. And yeah, this was the level I was looking to buy from, but we are looking really bullish now. So I'm not expecting price to come back there, although we could see that correction happen. So I'll keep an eye out for it. But more realistically, we're probably looking at a retest of this consolidation. Nice impulse, consolidation, big break to the upside. If we were to see a retest of this area, I would definitely be looking to play some longs and anticipate more upside and potentially a push all the way back to the high there. We've got a lot of confluence favoring more upside, high time frames favoring more upside. Now we're seeing momentum on the 4-hour hourly chart. So for me, this is a really good opportunity should we see a pullback to take it higher. Looks like price is just about taking out this high here as well, and we've done it pretty impulsively. So pound CAD does tick a lot of boxes. I'm liking the momentum we're seeing. This kind of whole pattern looks like a big V-shape or U-shape pattern, which typically means more upside as well. So yeah, hopefully we can see a pullback at some stage next week for pound CAD. Look for the next high low, retest of 1.74, and hopefully push back to the high there. So liking what I'm seeing with pound CAD going into next week. Okay, so over to pound yen. So pound yen still being very bullish, even more so than CAD yen and dollar yen, which we just had a look at. Still seeing a lot of momentum. Early in the week, I was talking about this area here, nice level of resistance where we could come back and find a retest of and continue higher. Just missed that level this week, or during the week I should say, just missed out on that level. But for me, it's still a nice fresh level of resistance, which we broke through pretty cleanly. And if we are going to have another pullback, this is an area which would interest me for a buy, for another push to the upside. We're still seeing a lot of bullish momentum present. Not looking for anything too crazy in pound yen because we are quite stretched, we are quite overextended to the upside. So although we've had a pretty big move and we can still see a lot more upside, I don't want to try and force anything and overstay my welcome. But at the moment, there's still a lot of momentum in this market. So if you do correct, come back and retest some resistance and support here, or even retest that low around 205. I do think this is a really smart place for a long, and just expecting that momentum to continue us to the upside. Not really seeing any evidence yet that the pound yen is likely going to reverse, or even have a big retracement, really. I mean, I know we're failing at the high a little bit, but in the grand scheme of things, that the market is so bullish. So only looking at areas of interest that favor more upside, this is definitely one of them. We've got big levels down here, which we could get to if we do go through that bigger retracement around 201,500. But for now, it's going to be focused on this level here, 204,800 we'll call it. And yeah, looking to take it back to the high around 206,300 for next week. Okay, so over to gold. So gold looking really bullish. Big push to the upside this week. I'm liking the price action. Impulse over here, another impulse over there. That is exactly what I'm talking about for gold. I want to see evidence the market is finding direction, finding momentum, and more importantly, breaking structure as well, taking out both of these highs this week. Really good stuff. So this to me just paints the picture that gold is likely on its next bullish run, and we're going to be expecting price to push back to the high there at 24.26, 24.30. That will be my next destination for gold. So the plan is just look for basically retracements to buy back up. We've just gotten broken through this high here, so that's the most obvious place I would be interested for a pullback. Retest that structure and then looking for some upside. I was talking about this area here on Friday, but I think, yeah, I don't think we'll see a big enough pullback to get there. I think that's a bit too much of an ask. But a retest of this area, even a retest of this consolidation looks really good to me. And yeah, just trying to find that next higher low to ride gold up. And who knows, we probably could even go and take out this high altogether and see some new highs. I would not be surprised at that, but this is what I'm looking at for gold. We finally made a bit of a statement, broken out this area. Definitely if dollar's going to keep falling, which my analysis looks like it will do. So if dollar does keep falling, I would expect gold to keep pushing. That'll be a good confluence for that. But yeah, if we can get a correction sometime next week, that'd be fantastic. Look for the next higher low, retest 23.68. Looking for a push back to the high and probably some new highs as well. So that's the plan next week for gold. Okay, so over to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, big move to the downside this week. We were looking for a bit more downside, to be honest, back to the lower end of this descending channel. Price kind of spiked through this level of support as well. So at the moment, Bitcoin is in a really interesting area where this could be a really nice opportunity to pick up some longs for Bitcoin. I'm keeping an eye on 52K. Should we break a little bit lower? I do like this brief area of consolidation, big expansive move to the upside. We could see price spill over one more time, test that area before some upsides, but for now we've just left a really big wick to the downside. Still just about holding on to support here as well. So for me, this is a really interesting time for Bitcoin, because if I do see a strong bullish candle close on the daily chart, for me that is definitely a signal that the market's finding support here, and potentially we could be on our next wave to the upside, because I'm still looking at this as a big impulse to the upside, a big bull flag of that impulse, and which normally does mean continuation higher up. So this could be price having another big sell-off, maybe shaking out some buyers and getting ready for a bigger move to the upside. And this is an area which does make a lot of sense for that. So if we could see some momentum to the upside in the daily chart, I do really like that wick there, wick down the daily chart on Thursday or Friday. On Friday, that small candle there Saturday. So if we can see some momentum picking up, maybe early next week, that could be a really nice place for a long. Looking for an entry similar to this, stop loss underneath that low, and hopefully a swing back to the highs, but really some new highs, because this is a pattern of continuation. So I do think we could be on our way back to the high and potentially further as well. So definitely keep your eye on 58K. Let's see if we can see some momentum on the daily chart, and I think this is a really nice place for some longs for Bitcoin. And last but not least, we've got silver. So silver was very bullish this week, equally as bullish as gold. Really nice impulse leg there, another one there as well. And I'm liking it because, again, we're breaking through structure, we're breaking out this descending channel. And again, it's a bit of a statement that's saying, okay, I'm ready to go bullish again, and I'm ready to take it back to the high. If I look at the daily chart, the swings of the market have been really nice. Impulse, correction, impulse, correction, impulse, correction. Now looking at the next impulse for some new highs eventually. So again, the analysis is pretty much the same as gold, which is why I like it so much, because I'm just going to be looking at both of them, seeing whichever gives me the better entry, the better the better retracement, the better risk rewards, because again, they're very correlated pairs that probably will do the same thing as well. Retrace together, retest levels together. It just, whichever one looks better, or the risk reward looks better as well. But I like them both, so we'll be keeping an eye on them both. 30.8 for me looks like a solid level of support. Retesting that consolidation there as well, just before we had NFP. Come back, retest that, looking for some entries to take it back to the high there, just around 32.5, and probably some new highs as well. But yeah, for me, that looks like the high low has been printed in. Really nice double bottom, break of structure. So now looking at a correction, first high low after that, and some continuations back to the high. So really excited for some silver longs, gold longs. Keep an eye on both of them. I think next week is going to be a good week for both of those markets. But anyway, guys, we have come up to the end of the analysis. If you have found it useful, enjoyed it, informative, please be sure to show some love, drop a like on the video, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Make sure you do hit the bell as well so you don't miss out on any streams or uploads in the future, so you are notified. Comment down below any pairs you're excited to trade next week. I want to find out. But guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I'll catch you all in the next week.